This is not a tutorial. This is a lesson. How many times have you watched a tutorial and then went to go execute and then you fell flat? That won't happen to you after this video. Trust me, nobody is explaining things the way I am, and this video is not going to be liked. The algorithm's gonna hate it, but you know what? I really don't care, man. I'm a man of the people. So I'm giving this one here for you guys for free. So the least you could do, smash that thumbs up. And the other thing I'm gonna say is, you ever see people who really complicate scissor work? Like, they section it a million times. These European dudes are flipping their shears all around. It's a bunch of nonsense, y'all, and I'm going to give you guys a rock solid technique that will work for anybody that walks through your door in this tutorial as well. Enjoy. There are some definite lessons that we're going to learn from here today. Now, if you're not a barber, I would keep it moving. This isn't the video for you. If you are a barber, you're trying to learn, this is definitely going to be a video you're going to want to watch. To start with, this client came in. I really didn't have any intention of filming it. I wasn't really paying attention to the camera, nothing. I just turned it on. And then when I got done, I was like, damn, this is a really nice haircut. Like, I'm super happy that I at least had the camera rolling. And I got lucky that it was mostly all in focus. So we're going to work with what we got. We got some lessons we're going to talk about today. So as always, we're going to be using the board here to help you guys learn. So to start with, we're actually going to be putting in our trimmer line. Now, one thing I've noticed throughout almost every haircut that I've ever done is whenever I don't put my line in with a trimmer or a somewhat harsh guideline, fade comes out good still, but it's not like, it doesn't pop. I think it looks so much better when you just go all out and put that line in there. Now, with that being said, this particular trimmer is the boosted, and I have this trimmer set back some. I've soft set this trimmer. Now, some of the trimmers that you buy from Gamma or Stylecraft, they actually come with a tool to soft set that trimmer, or you can set it aggressively. So the tool, you can flip it upside down, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to use my soft set trimmer to create this guideline, and I'm going to take my time with this guideline and make sure that I have it even. If you notice, I have it dipping down a little bit towards the temples, and I have it kind of dipping down a little bit in the back. A couple of reasons for that, but one would be I might want to keep some of my edge up towards the front. I might want to give myself some room from the colic, from the back. It's very important how we set this particular foundation up. And then we're going to go ahead. I'm going to use my talc powder. What you're going to notice when you use talc powder before you use an electric shaver, it's going to make the hair just fly off the head. It's going to slide really nice. It's going to allow the machine to cut. When you also pair that with the fact that I'm using this Instinct shaver, there's nothing faster than this. So I actually just replaced the foil cutters on this. And if you guys are not aware, we actually do have the foil cutters. So if you bought one and you broke it like I did, you guys can go ahead, you can replace that. So with the electric shaver, I'm actually running straight into the line. I'm not worried about nothing because I have all my tools set up correctly. So I'm going to take the shaver literally directly into the line. And I'm going to get rid of every single hair below. Now, what's really cool about this particular client's hair is it's super dark. The area that we're going to struggle is going to be making the connection into the top. So that's where we want to keep that contrast. And a lot of you guys don't really understand how to do that. So one of the first things I'm going to do right after I put this trimmer line in is I'm going to try to remove a little bit of the bulk. I can't start putting in guidelines and working on things until I remove a little bit of the bulk. The way that I chose to do that was with clipper over comb. It's a nice, easy comb. I use the Johnny B comb. I literally tip it out, cut what sticks out. I'm not really concerned about anything other than keeping this dark. So I can put the comb there, I can tip it out, and I can remove what sticks out. You can literally put this right up against the side of the head. Anybody can do this. The fact that I'm good at this is allowing me to begin building my connection into the top while keeping it dark. Sometimes if we take a bunch of guards into there, we might wind up creating a light spot in here, which would be a total disaster because his hair, despite the fact that it's dark, it's actually not super thick and it's actually very fine, which means that one wrong move, one slip up, and you won't have your result looking the way that mine does when we're done. The Instinct clipper has the diamond pattern blade on it, and I actually have this machine set super, super close. So here's our trimmer, and we began our very first guideline with our open taper step. I'm going to use this Rebel as an example, but all we're literally doing is opening up our taper all the way, and we're putting in that guideline right from where our trimmer line is. Underneath, we went completely to skin, and we are going to take our time and make sure that this line is even on both sides of the head. So look in your mirror, be sure about what you're doing before you move on to your next step. Now, there's also something else going on. Whenever I put the guidelines in, almost always, when I first put the guideline in, you will notice that I'll take the clipper and I'll actually tip it slightly out like this. My first few passes are actually going to be a lot further away than your typical open taper, because I want to see what that hair is going to do. I want to get an idea if there's some kind of funky growth pattern. Maybe there's like a little bald spot. Maybe there's just like something that's going to cause me trouble, right? So manipulating the clipper by holding it out like this, my first couple of steps, and then as I go, little by little, I'll start lowering the SN down, and that's what's going to actually cause it to get cut all the way to that open taper length. So another little tip before we move on to the next step is you notice that I always like to start right here behind the ear. There's a reason for that. If I'm gonna make a mistake, I'd much rather not make the mistake in the very front of the hairline. So I would definitely recommend starting there. And now you're gonna notice we're actually gonna skip a couple of steps. The half guard, we're always gonna skip the half guard, F the half guard, because it could definitely cause more trouble than good if you use it too early or if you use it too much. I'm gonna take my clipper, I'm gonna open it 2 clicks. So if you close it all the way and then you go back 1, 2. We actually got the number 1 on. In my very first couple of steps, I like to go halfway open. So one of the reasons why I do that with the number 1 guard on here is because you never really get a chance to see what the 1 can do. If it's all the way open, it's not gonna cut close enough. If it's all the way closed, it might create another line. So I like to make my first couple of flicks the exact same way I always do, with the butt end lifted up, tester, right? I want to test a couple of spots, see what that's doing. Then I can feel free to actually hold it flat. Then I can feel free to open the clipper, close the clipper, and do what I got to do. So our next step, in order to keep this dark, we're actually going to skip the 1.5, and it would be somewhere up here, but we're just going to put the 2 guard. And I just have this 2 guard fully closed, and I'm flicking up and off. I plan on handling anything above this with clipper over comb and also with some shear over comb. So when we're doing this step here, hopefully we're tying this in pretty good, and we do still have to cut the top. Usually I actually like to cut the top first, but I wasn't planning on cutting a whole lot off, so I knew that it wasn't going to really make that big of a difference in this particular case. With that being said, we've essentially set some guidelines. We've began a nice connection into the top, and we do have a little residual in this half guard area, as you can see. Okay, you guys, before we start removing our guidelines and we do our last steps, if you see anything at this point that doesn't look right, if you feel like you want to pick up the number 2 again or the number 1 again, we're going to start filling in these gaps now, but I would encourage you to do that before we do this. Everything is kind of built on being thorough here, so we want to definitely be thorough while we do this. And now we're going to start the thing that you guys struggle the most with, the removal of the harsh skin line. So before we go forward, I'd like to show you guys these 2 different blades. If you notice, this one here is the Vapor blade, and this one here is the diamond cut blade. Every blade in my arsenal serves a purpose. In fact, the other one that I was showing you was a taper blade. Now, I'm going to use a combination of these 3 blades to make every single thing happen. And generally when I see some fine hair, I already know certain things are going to happen. One thing I know with fine hair is I'm going to easily remove this line. Another thing I know with fine hair is I could accidentally make a mistake quite easily because there's not enough hair to cover that mistake, which is why you're going to actually see me switch around to a couple of different clippers now. I am going to find the formula that works for every single customer just by simply using the best barber tool I have, my eyes. So when my eyes are seeing that, hey, this isn't coming together right with this blade, put this blade down, try the other. So that's what you're going to see me do. And as I told you in the very beginning of this tutorial, I did not film this with the intention of ever releasing this. I just turned the camera on and kind of forgot about it. So we got lucky that we got as much footage as we did. I really like the outcome of this haircut. And now we got a couple other things we're going to learn. I'm actually going to take my most zero gapped clipper at this point, which happens to be the Instinct, and it has the diamond blade on here. And now you're going to notice a couple of different things are going to happen. I'm going to fully close it all the way. And now if this is my line, I'm going to just poke a couple of teeth into that line. And I might do that on both sides, but I'm going to do that all the way around the head. And I'm going to start to remove that really harsh guideline on the very bottom. Do not be alarmed if you accidentally make another line. Let's say that you make another line. That's okay. That's why we have our lever. That's why we have our clicks. And that's why one at a time we're going to begin 1 click, 2 click, 3 click, 4 click. We're going to keep doing that until we have this all the way in the open position. And as you can see, most of our line is going to start to disappear. And it's going to happen pretty easy, and it's going to happen pretty good if your stuff is set up correctly. So if your stuff is not set up correctly, this is what I'm going to encourage you guys to do. Watch some of my setup videos. Check it out. You'll learn a lot from it, and you'll struggle a lot less. Now we can actually jump to our half guard. After we've wiped out this area, now we can jump to the 0.5 guard. Now, if you're going to jump to the half guard, when you put the half guard on, very important that you start with it 2 clicks. 1, 2. The half guard is an overlapping guard, which means that if you have it all the way in the open position, it's actually going to cut longer than a number 1 closed. If you have it all the way closed, it's actually going to cut closer than an open taper with no guard on it. So if you put it right in the middle, that's when you're going to find that little sweet spot. So now we're going to bounce back and forth between our half guard. We're going to pick up a clipper with a taper blade. That's my other instinct that actually has a taper blade, is what you see me working with right now. And I'm going to pick up something with a vapor blade too, which I'm not sure if it was captured on the video or not. But I'm going to start bouncing around because that's what we have to do. So at this point, am I really using any different techniques? No, I'm using short strokes. I'm being very careful. I'm using the teeth. I'm staying lower than I think. And I'm jumping up to a half guard if I even suspect that I'm going to make an issue. I'm stretching the skin. I'm also pushing the skin down. I'm not really using any other techniques per se, but now I'm going to bounce around to a couple of different machines. And when I find the right combination, this hair is going to start to get tied together, and it's all going to come and it's all going to work out. So a definite takeaway, a big lesson that you can learn from this particular haircut right here would be to get your setup together correctly. Make sure that you have one trimmer that's zero gapped. Make sure that you have one trimmer that's not zero gapped, that's set back. Make sure that you have a clipper that has a taper blade on it, and you do not want to zero gap that one. In fact, it would be better if you didn't, because that's going to provide you a little leeway when we get a little higher up the board, right? We don't need a taper blade to remove a trimmer line. We have other stuff for that. And then you're obviously going to want to have one clipper zero gapped. I would recommend doing that with either a fade blade or a vapor blade, which kind of gives you the best of both worlds. Now, if you are on a budget, I could recommend the vapor blade because it's a good mix between the two different types of blade, taper and fade. And it's going to give you a little bit of leeway in between them both. So by now, if you guys are getting value out of this, if you're enjoying this tutorial, if you're enjoying the learning process here, Stylecraft, you guys can use my code Eddie, and you guys can buy anything that you see me using for 15% off. Now, anything outside of Stylecraft and Gamma, you guys can head over to Williamsport Barber Supply, use my code Eddie10, and you can save 10% off of your order. Let's say you're using Babyliss. In Babyliss, they have the taper blade, they have the fade blade, they now have something similar to a vapor blade, and they even have something called a wedge blade. I found the wedge blade to perform very similar to a taper blade. In fact, I really like that blade. So if you're using Babyliss, say like a low pro, if you put one low pro with like a wedge blade on it and one low pro with like a fade blade on it, you should be able to do most of what you need to do. That new MIM metal injection molding blade, that's a great blade. You can use that as well, and it's going to help you to get through all those haircuts too. So as I continue to detail this, I want to point out something like that I feel is a very big fact. As a barber instructor for over 10 years, 20 years in the business, I've come to learn one thing about barbering, and I think this also extends into YouTube. You have to be very mentally fit. In the beginning, you're not going to be very good at this. This is a business that causes you to constantly judge whether it's good or not. You judge yourself, you judge others, you judge haircuts, and it can be very easy to become negative towards yourself. I'm not good enough. I don't stack up. My work can't compete with these guys. Everybody on the internet's killing me. They got more followers. Like, it's easy to create this kind of like avalanche upon yourself when you need to be really mentally strong to say, you know what? Today maybe wasn't my day, but I'm going to figure this out. I got a little better today than I did yesterday. I stayed in the shop. I know nobody came, but I did the right thing because if somebody would have walked in, I was ready. I left with no money. I go home. My wife's like, what the hell are you doing? Why did you leave your job? Why are you doing this? Because you're following your dream. And you know, ultimately, you will persevere only if you believe in yourself. So I want you guys to double down on that belief in yourself. And I want you guys to take this message from me. In the beginning of my YouTube journey, in the beginning of my barber journey, there was so many obstacles that could have prevented me from getting to where I am. People in my inner circle, when I started YouTube, they're like, bro, you kind of like, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, I'm surprised that you're doing that. But none of that mattered to me because I was mentally fit enough to say, you know what? It's not me. I'm not going to fail. I'm going to work harder than them. I'm better at explaining these haircuts than a lot of people. I've made those connections with students. I've done this. I know that I can be a great teacher, and I know that I can educate you and anybody else. That dogged belief in myself carried me through some of the darkest times. So if you're going through one of those times right now, I just want to tell you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And if you are dogged in your belief of yourself, there's nothing that can stop you. There's nothing that can stop you. Let your legend grow, man. Let's get it. Let's grind on. So shout out to the sponsor of today's video. That's booked in. That gives me the time I need to go to the gym. That gives me the time I need to do other things. They are my booking scheduling software. And right now, they're offering you guys a discount, 50% off your first 3 months. You guys can head over to bookedin.com/Eddie and redeem your offer today. So after we're done using a little bit of shear over comb to blend that sides into the top, this is one of the most effective techniques, by the way, because using the clippers and using all our little strategies here, they're great for those shorter lengths. But when we're trying to make it blend above that parietal ridge, that's when we're going to probably run into more issues than not. And that's the perfect time to break out the shear over comb. So if you see anything during the process, jump back to your clippers, jump back to your trimmers, jump around and do what you got to do to get everything to lay down right. When it comes to cutting the top with scissors, I have seen so much complicated stuff out there. I don't understand why people need to section it into 5 places, use duck clips. Like, bro, there is one technique you need to master. This is it. This is going to make things so easy for you. So follow along. And if you got a pen and paper, let's go ahead and let's jot this down. All right. One little half moon shape. That represents the front facing view. And this is the top down view. There is a very simple technique that you can use that will get you by on every single haircut you'll ever encounter 99% of the time, all right? Some of these people in Europe are doing some crazy shit. Don't make no sense to me. I could create the exact same result with this if you know what you're doing. So what we're gonna do here, first and foremost, is we're gonna section out the client's bangs. I'm doing that figuratively. I'm not literally ever really going to section out hair unless it's like really long. Now, a person like this client, I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist, and I'm going to pick up a little mohawk guideline, the width of my comb. I'm going to cut that guideline. I'm going to make sure that that guideline is accurate, and a lot of times before I cut it, I'm going to hold that up, and I'm going to say to the client, does this look pretty good to you? There's a couple reasons why I do this. 1, to notify the client how much I'm going to take off. 2, to verify with the client that in the event, if it's too short or something like that, even though it will be my fault, I'll take responsibility for that. At least they agreed to it and they bear some responsibility as well. So always confirm with the client, and then we're going to cut. So right now, if we look at our front facing view, we have a section that's sort of like this, and we've cut it. Everybody's following along. Now we're going to take a section just beside that. I'm going to pick up that guideline and as much hair as can fit in my fingers without going past the second knuckle. So it's going to look something like this. I'm going to pick up a little section just like that beside it. And I'm going to cut. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to cut. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to continue this process all the way back until my guide has now gotten about this wide. Now, if you notice, we need to maintain the exact same shape as the scalp. So the scalp is going to curve, and so too must your fingers in most cases. If we wanted to, we could keep that guideline very straight. We could keep bringing it out. We could stack up some weight. There's a lot of things that we can do with this technique. But in most cases, you're going to want it to blend into the side. So in most cases, you're going to go ahead and you're going to curve and you're going to cut it to 90 degrees. And obviously, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And once we have this all cut down, every single thing should match the exact same shape as the scalp. Now, there's one more thing we need to worry about, and that's the bangs. Notice how I sectioned them out, and we have cut the interior length. How do we deal with that particular portion of the exterior length? Okay, pretend this is your client's eyes, and that's pretty much the nose right there, right? So we've cut our top, we used our Mohawk guideline, and essentially we have a shape on the top here that mimics the scalp. We didn't touch any of this hair that was growing in the front, and it's coming down to maybe about right here. When we hold it up, it turns out it's longer than our interior length. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut with the hair combed down in the 0 position. I'm going to make sure it's all even. I'm going to make sure I confirm with the client. A lot of these kids want their bangs like super long. Some of them want to scrunch it up afterwards. So if you have some really curly hair, you might want to actually kind of style it first before you even do this, so you have an idea of how much it's going to scrunch up on you. And you're not going to cut it even. You're going to cut it to look even. And that's for most cases too, because sometimes there could be a colic here. So I'm going to comb it down. I'm going to try to cut it as tension free as possible. And I'm going to make sure that I make it where the client wants it to be, right? Now I'm going to blend my exterior length, which would be this 0, into my interior length, which would be what we've previously cut. So now let's say that we comb it up to check this length against our interior length. If we were to just hack this off right here, we're going to wind up cutting the bangs too short, which is exactly why we've avoided this in the first place. So now we need to blend the interior to the exterior, and all we're going to do is we're going to take our comb, we're going to lift this up, we're going to tip our comb out until it matches right here, and we're going to cut. So if we go back to the top down look, and let's say their nose is here, just so we have an idea. So now we're going to use our pie shapings to be able to blend the interior to the exterior, as I just showed you. This area back here was cut to our interior length. This area here was not. So the head's not typically ever going to be this wide, so we're going to use pie shapings. So what it's going to look like is you're going to take a section of hair and you're going to comb it out this way. You're going to take half of the hair with you, you're going to leave half behind. Half of the hair with you, you're going to leave half behind. So it's just going to look like this. We're going to lift it up, lift it up, lift it up, and we're sort of pivoting around this area right here. That's about all there is to this whole process to cutting the top. After that, we're going to use the razor, we're going to fine tune any other details, and we're going to come up with this result right here. I hope you guys learned something from this tutorial. If you did, do me a huge favor, man, because I am really suffering with the views, the algorithm, the everything. Doing stuff like this is obviously a lot of work. So at the very least, if you could smash that thumbs up, drop a little love down below. Now, the roadmap that I laid out for this particular haircut worked for this particular haircut, but there are going to be some adjustments I'm going to make when it comes to creating this style right here. And the good news is, if you guys want to head over to this tutorial, which I'm just finishing up this tutorial as well, so you guys can check it out. Let's go over there. I'm going to show you what different things I did to create that particular style based on the nature of that hair. And that's why this is a forever learning thing, because every day you're going to deal with something different. Somebody's going to walk in with some hair you've never seen before, and that's what keeps it exciting. So this is the YouTube Barber Academy. Mr. Eddie Barber, over 800 videos to help you learn. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace. All right, you guys, before you go, the very last thing I want to ask of you guys is, what did you think about that tutorial? What could I have explained better? And I'm seriously looking for some honest feedback here. I'm really trying to improve the process and everything we do. And it's like 6:30 in the morning, sun coming up behind me. It's a beautiful day. I hope you go and get yours, man. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.